Style-wise, it would be nice if at least the sidebar and the chat were side by side instead of one on top of the other. So let's add just enough CSS to do that. So there are several ways we could do this. We just put the CSS here in app.css, but where's the fun in that? So that works because that's being imported into app.js. And we could do that. We could create like a main.css and a sidebar.css and whatever, and import them there. That would not really do anything to scope the CSS to those components, though. We could have sidebar.css, only import it inside sidebar.js, but those styles could still leak and impact other components. They're still all global styles. So that's really just a code organization thing, more than it actually ties the CSS to any particular component. And sometimes it's nice to have that style actually travel with the component and to be scoped to it so it can't leak out and impact something else. If you've dealt with any large projects, you've almost certainly had that problem with styles leaking out of their intended scope, unless you just use classes and IDs like crazy. So we're going to try another way. There are several other ways. And it's a lively conversation on the web and Twitter and so on, what the preferred way is. But there are lots of ways to actually do CSS in JavaScript. And there are several advantages to doing so, not the least of which is that whole actually scoping the style to that component thing. So we're going to use two different methods of doing this in this class. Today, we're going to introduce the simpler way, which works much of the time, and that is to use a style prop. So what we'll do is we'll create an object. I'm in main right now. I'll just create a variable outside the component called const styles. It'll be an object, and I'll just put the CSS rules I want right in here. And the thing I want these to be side by side. So I need to use Flexbox. So what we put here will look a lot like CSS, but we're in JavaScript, so there are a couple differences. First of all, I won't have semicolons at the end of each line, right? I'll have commas, because this is just an object. And also, because it's JavaScript, we will camel case the property names instead of dasherizing them, or putting a dash in them like you do in CSS. So with display, that doesn't matter. Also, I can't just say display flex, because then it'll look for a variable called flex, and there isn't one. So I need to quote that. It becomes the string flex. So display flex. And then what I do is I just throw a style prop on this div. Style equals this styles object. Now they're side by side. If I look at this, the Elements tab, if I find here's my div, there's display flex. And you'll notice that's just on the style attribute on the HTML, because we threw it on a style prop in React. Piece of cake. In fact, if you find that in the React Dev Tools, here's that div. You'll see props. It has a prop called style that has display flex. If we hover over this thing, I would really like them all to fill the entire height of the container. So I'll add a couple more rules for that. First, I'll do align items stretch. And remember, there's a good guide for Flexbox on CSS tricks. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's a lot to it, but align items, you'll see the different values there. You see what stretch does. Stretch stretches each item to be the full height of its container. So what this rule does is it makes sidebar and chat just as tall as main. Now main is still only that big. So I'll set an explicit height on that. I'll set a height of 100 VH. VH is a unit equal to 1% of the height of the window. So 100 VH would be the entire height of the window. And no, 100% doesn't work. There you go. Now they're all the full height. It's just 3 lines of CSS. CSS that we added in JavaScript. Style main. I think that's all we'll have to do to main. Everything else will be in one of the other two.